Well, good evening. It's me, John Cole, and tonight is the third night of reading from my chapter from Behind the Power Your Success is Waiting on You. Now, for those that may have um, wanted to watch this on Facebook, I missed a step in the process. So, unfortunately, this is only getting pushed out to YouTube tonight. However, I will be posting the link over to Facebook. So, those who have been following the saga, the story, will have an opportunity to watch it should they choose. So there's two things that I'm going to be going over. First, of course, is the rest of the chapter. And the second is part of the book, which, other than the story, is extremely valuable. And that is a section called Your Path to Power. Now, the book itself, I'm not the only contributor. There were 10 other authors who contributed to the book, and each of the stories is just as powerful as mine. Each talks about different issues that, we all can relate to at some level. So I certainly do encourage you to grab yourself a copy of the book because it's far more than just my story. So let's get started with the continuation and the conclusion. This section's called The Exodus. I have since forgiven myself for hurting Sarah, but at the same time was consumed by guilt and shame. Not only did I betray her, but I also betrayed myself by falling prey to my emotions. I resolved to forevermore avoid that from happening again. I quickly fell back into my people-pleasing comfort zone and moved forward in my career. And what a career it was. For the next 2 decades, I did amazingly well. My efforts in California paid dividends, and I was selected to transition from enlisted member to commissioned officer. This rare and coveted change in status led to increasingly difficult positions of authority, but I was ready. I could write policy, guide people through their careers, and manage critical Coast Guard operations like September 11th in Boston and Hurricane Katrina in Mobile, Alabama. I renewed my college pursuits, earning a master's degree in information technology. And in 2007, I married a third time. I told myself that this marriage would be different, but it was not. My people-pleasing and perfectionistic behaviors remained tied to me like an anchor. Despite the problems it caused, neither one of us was willing to change, so we ignored the problem. From Massachusetts to West Virginia, Hawaii to California, my home life was unpredictable and volatile. My work life, on the other hand, continued to blossom. In truth, I saw my uniform self as the best version of me because it was the only one that mattered, until it did not. In late 2020, after more than 35 years of continuous service, I learned that my evaluations no longer ranked high enough to keep me actively employed. The Coast Guard, like any military organization, is a pyramidic organization. There are many in the lower ranks and far less in the higher. Ascension meant competition, and competition was based on evaluations. The simple fact was that I was outcompeted. It was time for me to retire. To be told that I no longer mattered was soul-crushing. The most difficult part, however, was the transition to civilian life. My third marriage, the one that took place in 2007, remained stable. This was not because I had changed or because I had become self-aware. It was because I had grown codependent. Codependency is an excessive emotional or psychological reliance on a partner where one person assumes responsibility for meeting another person's needs. It often happens in conjunction with low self-esteem and a strong desire for approval. As a people pleaser, I was ripe for codependency because I did not relish disappointing other people. And as it happens, she was the same. We would often switch roles, with one of us needing and the other providing, and then switch back. Through it all, we failed to see the impact it was having. We would resent each other and not know why. At times, we would become angry, distant, or sad for no apparent reason. For more than 15 years, we lived in an unhealthy, toxic, and highly damaging environment because we focused too much on the other person, neglecting ourselves in the process. So it was under these circumstances that I found myself living full time at the beginning of 2020 without a job and not knowing without knowing what to do. I began to assume all household duties. Moreover, I began to criticize her behaviors, much like I did with my first wife. Neither seemed to subscribe to keeping a perfect house, and neither seemed to be willing to accept my unsolicited help. I was frustrated, angry, in fact, and not afraid to express it. Nevertheless, I knew it was not her that made me angry. It was something deeper. I felt as if I no longer had an identity, and that was terrifying. Men do not ask for directions, my father used to say, and I believed it. As a child, I remember spending countless hours in the car, driving around aimlessly until we happened upon our destination. My mother would try to coax him to stop at the gas station, but he was stubborn. I know where I'm going, he would say. Although I had my doubts, he did teach me that asking for directions or help of any kind was taboo for men. It was just something we did not do. Even the military discouraged it. Problem solving was and remains an evaluated skill on all personnel assessments. Consequently, I learned to solve everything myself. But this was something bigger. Rediscovering myself was not something I could do on my own. It was like throwing myself a life preserver as I was actively drowning. It was impossible. Ultimately, I made the courageous decision to stop at a gas station and ask for directions. I hired a coach. The paintbrush. My people pleasing and perfectionistic behaviors stemmed from the stories I invented in childhood to feel safe. To me, safety meant yielding my power to others to avoid physical or mental pain. It worked amazingly well for my military career, but destroyed everything else. For my coach, the challenge was to convince me that those stories were simply that, stories. She believed that once I accepted that, I could change my thoughts about them and take back my power. And my power was rooted in my authentic self. I was willing, but needed proof. She suggested finding something, an activity perhaps, that was purely me. I resisted as expected because there were always other things to do besides focus on me. To do anything for me and me alone felt selfish, egotistical, and wrong. Nevertheless, her perseverance paid off when I finally picked up a paintbrush and swept it across a canvas. Painting was not new to me. During my high school years, I seriously considered art as a career, but abandoned it when I married and joined the military. Still, it never left my mind. Over the years, I would find excuses to use my creativity in the workplace. I would create flyers, design newsletters, and paint murals designed to make other people happy. It never once occurred to me that I always felt my best when I was creating. It was for that reason that I thought art would work for me. I was correct. When I have a brush in my hand, my world changes. Time stops, noises fade, and problems disappear. I become transfixed on the blank canvas as my mind begins to play. It explores, no, dances among the infinite possibilities and permutations of color, line, and shape. I can feel my power grow because I, and I alone, have the absolute power to choose any combination that I see fit. Finally, I am ready. My breathing slows and I make my first stroke. It's not what I expected. Instead of panicking, I thought to myself, if I am not beholden to anyone, why fear reprisal, judgment, and blame? There was no reason, so I let that thought go. Mistakes were simply data points for learning, my coach would say. She echoed Bob Ross when he said, "We don't make mistakes. We just have happy accidents." I accepted my happy accident and continued painting. Eventually, I set the brush aside. I was tired, exhausted even, but my painting was complete. Sitting back, I smiled, not because the painting was the Mona Lisa, but because I felt good. For the briefest of moments, I was able to remember who I was and connect with my authentic self. The pivot. With hope renewed, I boldly told myself that I would no longer choose to be a people pleaser or a perfectionist. However, I soon found it easier to say than to do. I was so committed to my childhood stories that my destructive behaviors continued, offset only by those brief moments of creativity. Truthfully, it became a maddeningly circuitous battle between my old self and the self I wanted to be. But I persevered. Through coaching, I learned that the only way to break the cycle was to change the meaning behind the stories I had created. This was extremely important because I could do nothing about the results of my past childhood abuse, poorly handled marriages, or the pain I caused to other people through the years. I could, however, reframe my thoughts about them to change what they meant to me. Feelings come from thoughts. Combined, thoughts and feelings create beliefs. Believing in people, places, or things is not necessarily a bad thing and can often drive us to great success. However, beliefs are not facts. They are only a subjective confidence that something is true. If we ignore this truism and think our beliefs are fact, they assume a meaningful place in our lives. And unfortunately, this can alter our reality and lead to destructive behavior. This was me. I took my beliefs as fact, and these facts meant something to me. So I thought that my dad used the belt because I was a problematic child. So I believed that he did not love me. And this showed up throughout my life as a need to be perfect and please others. In truth, neither parent intended to cause me harm. They were simply repeating behaviors taught to them. And the same applies to my other limiting beliefs. I was never an innately bad husband. I was only doing the best I could with what little knowledge I had. I was only doing the best I could with that little knowledge. Moreover, I never purposely hurt others. I simply lacked the proper tools to self regulate and effectively communicate. Thanks to coaching, hundreds of hours of self work, and a strong motivation to improve myself, I am reshaping my life. Not only have I stripped the meaning behind the belt and the paddle as instruments of discipline, but I am examining my entire belief system. Doing so is allowing me to reclaim my power and rewrite my story. And you know something? I am worth it. Your path to power. I don't know how many times I've heard the phrase people can't change or some variation of it. Heck, I've even said it myself about myself. But here's the thing, it is a complete lie. People can change, and they do it all the time. So, why does it feel so difficult for us to change when we try it? Why does it feel so hard to escape our poor habits, destructive thoughts, or unwanted behaviors? The short answer is that we prefer to live in our misery because we are accustomed to it. Remaining the same is comfortable, warm, and safe, even when we despise every second of it. And if you think about it, it's true. Honestly, doesn't it feel easier and more secure to stay in your comfort zone than to change and risk losing family and friends because you no longer fit? I mean, it's terrifying. The problem with remaining in our comfort zones is that it keeps us small. It limits our potential and, quite frankly, is disempowering. The truth is, we all have free will. With free will comes an innate power to choose what we think and how we feel and how we. Powerful things you can do is notice how you feel. Since all feelings come from thoughts, many of which are hidden behind our feelings, ask questions. Be curious about your anger, your sadness, your disappointment. What happened in the past that makes you feel a particular way today? More importantly, is that story still applicable? And if not, make a new choice and create a new story. You are that powerful. Number 3, build and maintain strong boundaries. A boundary refers to a limit that you set to protect your emotional, physical, and mental well being. It's a way of communicating your needs and expectations to others and ensuring that your relationships are respectful, healthy, and mutually beneficial. I accept this. I do not accept this. Set boundaries for yourself too. Boundaries help maintain a sense of identity, autonomy, and self-worth. Number 4, know thyself. Cultural, political, religious, and social factors can influence how we think and act, sometimes against our better judgment. Unfortunately, over time, we begin to believe the stories and adopt unwanted thoughts and behaviors. To know thyself is to ask yourself why you believe what you believe. And if something doesn't feel good, change the underlying thoughts. Create a new belief that feels better. Trust me, you'll be glad you did. And number 5, ask for help. We often feel as if we are the only people on this planet experiencing our problem. Further, our shame and guilt can be so strong that they keep us quiet. This prevents us from healing and living our best life. While we are uniquely individual, we do share a common humanity. There is no question that your concern is shared by others. All it takes is a moment of courage to ask for help. I believe in you, and I think it's time for you to believe in yourself. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to watch and listen to my chapter. If you are interested in purchasing the book, of course, and reading more about some of the other stories from the other authors, I definitely encourage you to do so. Again, it really is a very powerful book, and it's very meaningful because, my story is your story, and your story is mine. And really, we all share the same experience together. So, with that, I will bid you all a good night, and thanks again. I'll see you soon.